The judge's gavel strikes the dark wooden table, and the sound echoes in my bones like an echo of all the years I've lived in silence. Here I am, Eleanor Vance, 67 years old, sitting in this cold courtroom with my wrinkled hands clutching a yellow envelope I've kept for 13 years. My heart pounds so hard, I'm afraid everyone can hear it. Across from me is my daughter, Valerie, in her elegant suit and with her red-tied lawyer pointing at me as if I'm a criminal. Her eyes burn with a rage I don't understand, or perhaps understand all too well. Beside her, Attorney Mark Sullivan reviews some papers with the confidence of someone who believes they have the truth on their side. "Your Honor," Valerie says, her voice trembling but firm, "my mother has had my children for 13 years without my consent. This constitutes parental kidnapping. I never authorized her to take them." Her words sting like sharp daggers. Kidnapping. That word pierces my chest and lodges deep where I keep all my motherly pains. I look back and see my 3 grandchildren, Arthur, 20, Emily, 18, and Andrea, 16, sitting in the 3rd row. Their faces are pale, confused, as if they're watching a movie they don't understand. Judge Theodore Mason, a man with gray hair and tired eyes, observes me over his glasses. "Mrs. Vance, what do you have to say to these accusations?" My fingers squeeze the envelope. Inside are the proofs of a truth I've held for years, protecting it like a treasure or a wound that can't heal. "Your Honor," I say, my voice hoarse, "I didn't kidnap anyone. I simply raised the children my daughter abandoned on my doorstep." "That's a lie!" Valerie shouts, standing up. "I never abandoned them. I had mental health issues. I needed temporary help." Her lawyer calms her with a hand gesture. "Your Honor, my client was hospitalized for severe postpartum depression. She needed urgent medical treatment. Mrs. Vance took advantage of that vulnerability to keep the children and alienate them from their biological mother." I feel the courtroom fill with whispers. Some people in the audience nod as if they've already decided who the victim in this story is. But I know the truth. I've lived it day after day for 13 years. Early mornings, fevers, homework, and hugs when they cried, asking for their mom. "Mrs. Vance," the judge says in a softer tone, "I understand that caring for your grandchildren must have been difficult, but if the biological mother is requesting custody—" "With all due respect, Your Honor," I interrupt, my voice coming out firmer than I expected, "there are things this court needs to know before making any decision." I raise the yellow envelope and hold it high. It's a simple gesture, but I see Valerie's eyes widen with what looks like fear. "Here, I have documents that will completely change this conversation." The judge leans forward. "What kind of documents?" "Proof of what really happened 13 years ago. Proof of why my daughter is here today, and it's not for maternal love." My voice trembles slightly, not from fear, but from an emotion I can't name. Valerie turns pale. "Mom, please don't do this." "Do what, daughter? Tell the truth?" Attorney Mark Sullivan clears his throat. "Your Honor, Mrs. Vance is trying to divert attention from the main issue. Documents from the past don't change the fact that my client has legal rights to her children." "On the contrary," I say, looking directly into my daughter's eyes, "these documents explain exactly why we are here today. They explain why, after 13 years of absolute silence, of not sending a single dollar for her children's expenses, of not even calling it Christmas, my daughter suddenly appears with a lawyer." The silence in the room is heavy, like the air before a storm. I can hear my heart pounding, the rustle of papers the lawyer nervously shuffles, the ragged breathing of my grandchildren behind me. The judge looks at me intently. "Mrs. Vance, are you suggesting there are hidden motives in this lawsuit?" "I'm not suggesting anything, Your Honor. I'm stating that there are." My eyes meet Valerie's, and I see in them the same expression she had as a child when I caught her in mischief. And it's all documented here. "Mom," Valerie whispers, "please think about what you're doing." "I've had 13 years to think," I reply. 13 years of sleepless nights when Arthur had a fever. 13 years of school meetings where I was the only family member present. 13 years waiting for a call from you that never came. Judge Mason gently taps his gavel. Mrs. Vance, are you willing to present these documents as evidence in this case? I look at the envelope in my hands. Inside are the letters Valerie wrote to me, the photos I kept, the receipts I saved, and something else. Something even my grandchildren don't know I have. Something that will change everything. Yes, Your Honor, I am ready. The judge nods and pauses to review his agenda. Very well, Mrs. Vance, but before examining these documents, I would like to hear your full account of the facts. Tell us what happened 13 years ago. I close my eyes for a moment and transport myself back to that day that changed my life forever. It was a rainy Tuesday in October. I was in my small kitchen preparing chamomile tea to calm my nerves after a doctor's appointment where my arthritis had been confirmed to be worsening. Then I heard the knocks on the door. It was near noon. I begin, feeling my voice soften with the memory. Valerie appeared at my door with the 3 children. Arthur was 7 years old, Emily 5, and Andrea barely 3. They were dirty, their clothes wrinkled, and the little ones were crying from hunger. I look over at my grandchildren. Arthur gives me a sad smile, as if remembering fragments of that day. Emily's eyes are glassy, and Andrea, my little Andrea, hugs herself as she did when she was a scared child. My daughter entered my house like a hurricane, I continue. She carried a plastic bag with some of the children's clothes, all jumbled, nothing clean. She told me, "Mom, I need you to keep them for a while. It will only be a few weeks until I sort out my problems." Valerie lowers her gaze. Her lawyer whispers something in her ear, but she doesn't respond. I know she remembers that day as clearly as I do. I asked her what problems, if she needed financial help, if something had happened with the children's father, but she just kept repeating that she would be back soon. She gave each of them a quick kiss and left. The children ran to the window shouting, "Mommy! Mommy!" but she had already gotten into a taxi and was gone. The silence in the room is absolute. I can feel people's breathing slow, deepen, as if they are holding something in. That night, Arthur asked me when his mom was coming back. I told him soon. Andrea cried because she wanted her teddy bear that had been left at Valerie's house. Emily, my sweet Emily, helped me prepare dinner with her little hands as if she understood that it was now my responsibility to keep everyone together. My voice breaks a little, and I take a sip of water from the glass the court officer offers me. Days passed, then weeks. I didn't know where Valerie lived because she had moved. I had no phone to reach her. The children asked about her every day. Arthur started wetting the bed at night. Emily stopped talking for almost a month, and Andrea, my little Andrea, developed a cough that wouldn't go away. I watch Valerie shift uncomfortably in her chair. Her hands tremble slightly as she fiddles with a ring on her finger. I decided to enroll them in the school near my house. I needed their documents, their birth certificates. I went to Valerie's old address, and the neighbors told me she had left the apartment without paying 3 months' rent. The landlady handed me a box of things my daughter had left behind, including some of the children's papers. Judge Mason takes some notes. "Did you try to report the situation to the authorities?" "Your Honor, I thought it was temporary. Valerie had had problems before, but she had never completely abandoned her children. I believed she would return. Besides, what was I going to say? That my daughter had left her children with me and wasn't coming back? At that moment, there was no crime. It was a mother who had left her children with their grandmother." I pause and look directly at Valerie. But months passed, then years. Arthur turned 8, and he asked if he could invite his mom to his party. I told him we would try to find her. Emily started 1st grade, and when the teacher asked about her parents, she pointed to me and said, "This is my mom, Eleanor." Tears threaten to fall, but I hold them back. It's not time to cry, it's time to remember. Expenses multiplied. My pension barely covered me alone, and suddenly I had to feed, clothe, and educate 3 children. I sold some jewelry I had saved. I took a job cleaning houses on weekends. A neighbor, Mrs. Alma Jensen, helped me by watching the little ones when I went to work. The judge looks up, hearing the name Jensen. "Any relation to me?" "She's my sister, Your Honor," I reply. and she can testify about everything we went through those first few years." Valerie and her lawyer exchange worried glances. They hadn't expected this. "When Andrea turned 5, we had a crisis. She got pneumonia, and we had to hospitalize her. The doctors asked for health insurance, parental authorization, documents I didn't have. That's when I decided to go through the legal process to obtain temporary guardianship of the children." My voice grows firmer. "I hired a lawyer with the few savings I had left. It cost me $800 I didn't have, but it was necessary. The lawyer tried to locate Valerie to notify her about the guardianship process. We published notices in the newspaper as required by law. No one responded." "Did you obtain legal guardianship?" the judge asks. "Yes, Your Honor. 10 years ago, this very court granted me legal guardianship of my 3 grandchildren. I have all the documents. For 3 years, the law required us to continue searching for the biological mother. She never appeared, never called, never sent a single dollar." Valerie stands up abruptly. "I was sick. I had depression. I couldn't take care of them in that state." "Please sit down," the judge orders firmly. Then he looks at me. "Continue, Mrs. Vance." "The children grew up with me. Arthur graduated from high school with honors. Emily won poetry contests. Andrea learned to play guitar and formed a band at school. They went to therapy when they needed it. I took them to the doctor for vaccinations, to all their school events. I celebrated every birthday, every achievement, every important moment of their lives." I look at my grandchildren and see Arthur nod with tears in his eyes. "I never lied to them about their mother. I always told them she loved them, but couldn't take care of them at that time. I showed them pictures of her when they were babies. I saved every drawing they made for her, hoping she would return." "And they never had contact with her during all these years?" the judge asks. "Not once, Your Honor, until 2 months ago, when she appeared at my door with her lawyer and a custody demand." The judge leans forward. 2 months? And what changed after 13 years of total absence?" I smile slightly, because here comes the part Valerie doesn't want known. I raise the yellow envelope. "That answer, Your Honor, is in these documents." Judge Theodore Mason extends his hand toward me. "Mrs. Vance, please approach and present the documents you mentioned." I stand up slowly, feeling my knees protest with arthritis, but my determination is stronger than any physical pain. I walk toward the stand with the yellow envelope clutched to my chest. I can hear Valerie's nervous heels clicking against the wooden floor. "Your Honor," Attorney Mark Sullivan says, standing up, "I request that any document presented be examined by the defense before being admitted as evidence." "Of course," the judge replies. "Mrs. Vance, hand the documents to the clerk to be reviewed by both parties." I open the envelope carefully, as if it were a treasure chest I'd protected for years. My fingers tremble slightly, not from fear, but from the emotion that the truth is finally coming to light. Inside are photographs, handwritten letters, receipts, and some folded papers that form the heart of this story. "Let's start with this," I say, pulling out a packet of photographs tied with a red ribbon. "These are photos I took the day Valerie left the children with me." The clerk takes the photographs and passes them to the judge, who examines them one by one. His expression gradually changes, becoming more serious. "Describe what we see in these images, Mrs. Vance." The first photo shows Arthur in dirty, torn clothes. You can see his shoes have holes in the soles. The second is of Emily, who had dried food marks on her face and tangled hair. The third is of Andrea, my little Andrea, who was wearing a diaper that clearly hadn't been changed in hours. Valerie covers her face with her hands. Her lawyer whispers something to her, but she shakes her head repeatedly. "Your Honor," I continue, "I took these photos because I wanted to document the condition in which the children arrived at my home, not with the intention of using them against her, but because a nurse neighbor advised me that it was important to keep a record of everything." The judge passes the photos to Valerie's lawyer, who quickly reviews them and shows them to his client. I see my daughter close her eyes tightly, as if trying to erase those memories. "Now," I say, pulling out a second group of documents, "these are the letters Valerie wrote to me during the first 6 months after leaving the children." The judge takes the letters and immediately notices the handwritten script. "These are written in your daughter's own hand?" "Yes, Your Honor. I'd recognize her handwriting anywhere." I look at Valerie. "Tell the judge what those letters said, daughter." Valerie remains silent, but her lawyer takes the letters and begins to read them. His expression changes dramatically as he reads. "Your Honor," I say with a clear voice, "in the first letter, dated 3 weeks after she left the children, Valerie wrote to me that she had met a man named Javier Dawson and that she was moving with him to another city. She asked me to take care of the children a little longer because her new partner didn't want immediate family responsibilities." The silence in the room is so profound that you could hear a pin drop. All eyes are fixed on Valerie, who has begun to cry silently. "In the second letter," I continue, "she informed me that she was pregnant with Javier's child and that she couldn't return for the children because he had threatened to leave her if she brought burdens from the past into their new life." "Pregnant?" the judge asks with surprise. "Yes, Your Honor. My daughter had another child with Javier Dawson, a boy who is now 12 years old and lives with them. A child she could raise because it was convenient for her new relationship." Arthur, Emily, and Andrea exchange looks of shock from their seats. This information is new to them. I never told them they had a younger brother because I didn't want to hurt them more than they already were. "In the third letter," my voice grows harder, "Valerie asked me to sign some papers officially renouncing any claim to her so she could start a new life without legal complications. She offered me $500 for the expenses I had incurred with her children up to that point." Attorney Mark Sullivan is pale. This information was clearly not part of the version his client had told him. "And you signed those papers?" the judge asks. "No, Your Honor. I wrote back telling her I didn't want her money, but if she really wanted to disappear from our lives, she should do it completely. I told her not to contact us again until she was truly ready to be a mother." I pull another document from the envelope. This is her response to my letter, the last communication we had in 13 years. The judge reads the document, and his expression hardens noticeably. "Mrs. Vance, can you read aloud what this letter says?" I take the paper with trembling hands, but my voice comes out firm and clear. "Mom, it's fine. I won't bother you anymore. Take good care of the children because I have my own family now. If anyone ever asks, tell them their mom had to go far away for work. I don't want them to suffer anymore. Sincerely, Valerie." Tears stream down my grandchildren's cheeks. Arthur rises from his seat as if to approach me, but Emily stops him, taking his arm. "Your Honor," I say, putting the letter away, "for 13 years I respected that decision. I never looked for my daughter. I never tried to contact her. I raised her children with love, with the few resources I had, hoping that someday she would mature and return for the right reasons." "And why do you believe she has returned now?" the judge asks. I smile sadly as I pull the last document from the envelope. "Because 3 months ago, Your Honor, my brother Arthur Vance, Valerie's uncle who lived in Texas and had no children, passed away." The judge leans forward with renewed interest. "And what does that have to do with this case?" "My brother, Your Honor, left a significant inheritance to each of his grandchildren, $50,000 in total for Arthur, Emily, and Andrea, respectively." Valerie sobs louder, and her lawyer seems to be considering abandoning the case. "But the inheritance," I continue with a firm voice, "can only be claimed by the children if they are under the custody of a direct relative, meaning their mother or their grandmother. And I, as their current legal guardian, had already initiated the procedures for them to access that money when they came of age." The judge looks at me intently. "Are you suggesting that Mrs. Valerie Vance returned solely to gain access to her children's inheritance?" I pull the final paper from the envelope. It's a copy of a legal document that was difficult to obtain. "Your Honor, this is a private report I commissioned about my daughter's activities in recent months. It shows that exactly 2.5 months ago, she hired the services of attorney Mark Sullivan and began investigating my brother's inheritance." Valerie's lawyer stands up abruptly. "Objection! That investigation is private and illegal." "It's completely legal," I reply calmly. I hired a licensed private investigator after my daughter suddenly appeared at my door with legal threats. I had every right to protect my grandchildren. The judge taps his gavel. Order in the court. He looks at me with an expression that mixes respect and curiosity. Mrs. Vance, is there anything else in that envelope the court should know? I look at the envelope, which now feels much lighter, but I know it still holds the most important secret of all. Yes, Your Honor. There's something else, something even my grandchildren don't know yet. Judge Theodore Mason adjusts his glasses and looks at me with an intensity he hadn't shown before. Mrs. Vance, what else does that envelope contain that you consider relevant to this case? My fingers search for the last document, hidden at the bottom of the yellow envelope. It's a sheet, folded several times, yellowed with time, but containing the most important words of this story. However, before revealing it, I know there's something I must do. Your Honor, before showing this last document, I would like the court to hear directly from my grandchildren. I believe it's only fair that they express their own opinion about this situation. Valerie sits up in her seat with hope in her eyes. Her lawyer, Mark Sullivan, nods quickly. Your Honor, my client agrees. The minors have the right to express their preferences. The judge considers the request. Very well, Arthur Vance. Please approach the stand. My eldest grandson rises slowly. At 20 years old, Arthur is a tall, slender young man with his grandfather's intelligent eyes and the sensitivity he inherited from our family. He walks to the stand with measured steps, as if each movement requires conscious decision. Arthur, the judge says in a gentle voice, I understand this situation must be very difficult for you. I want you to know that you can speak freely. Do you remember your biological mother? Arthur swallows and glances briefly at Valerie before answering. Yes, Your Honor, I have some vague memories. I remember there was a lot of confusion at home. I remember that sometimes there wasn't food and that my grandma Eleanor would show up with bags from the grocery store. I remember the day we arrived at her house and she bathed us, gave us clean clothes, and made us chicken soup. And how do you feel about your mother's absence during these years? Arthur closes his eyes for a moment. Your Honor, for a long time I was angry. I didn't understand why my mom didn't come back. My school friends had parents who picked them up, who went to their soccer games, who helped them with homework. I had my grandma Eleanor, who worked 2 jobs to support us and still never missed a school meeting. I watch Valerie cry silently, but Arthur continues with a maturity that breaks my heart. When I turned 15, I stopped being angry. I understood that my grandma had sacrificed her peace of mind, her health, and her savings for us. I understood that she had no obligation to raise us, but she did it because she loves us. And now that your biological mother has returned requesting custody, how do you feel? Arthur looks directly at Valerie. Mom, if I can call you that, I'm glad to know you're doing well. I'm glad to know you were able to overcome your problems, but I can't pretend these 13 years didn't happen. I can't pretend it doesn't hurt to know you formed another family while we grew up, wondering what we had done wrong. The silence in the room is absolute. Valerie sobs louder. Where would you like to live, Arthur? The judge asks. Your Honor, I'm already of legal age. I can legally make my own decisions, but if my answer can help protect my younger sisters, then the answer is clear. I want to stay with my grandma Eleanor. She's the one who raised us, who loves us unconditionally, who never abandoned us. Arthur returns to his seat, and the judge calls Emily. My 18-year-old granddaughter walks to the stand with the grace that has always characterized her, but I can see the tension in her shoulders. Emily, you are also of legal age. What is your perspective on this situation? Emily takes a deep breath before speaking. Your Honor, I have some clearer memories than Arthur, because I was a little older when we came to live with my grandma. I remember my biological mom cried a lot. I remember that sometimes she would stay in bed all day, and we had to take care of ourselves. Valerie shouts from her seat. I was sick. I had postpartum depression. The judge silences her with a stern look. Please allow the young lady to finish. Emily continues, I understand you were sick, Mom, but I also remember the day we arrived at Grandma Eleanor's house. For the first time in a long time, someone asked us if we had eaten. Someone read us stories before bed. Someone told us everything would be okay. Tears run down my cheeks as I listen to my granddaughter's words. Grandma Eleanor took us to the psychologist when we had nightmares. She enrolled us in extracurricular activities so we wouldn't feel different from other children. When I was 14 and was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes, she learned about nutrition, about glucose measurement, about everything she needed to take care of me. The judge takes notes as Emily speaks. And regarding staying with your biological mother or your grandmother? Your Honor, my biological mom is a stranger to me. I know she shares my blood, but my Grandma Eleanor shared my childhood, my adolescence, my fears, and my dreams. The decision is easy. Finally, the judge calls Andrea. My youngest granddaughter, 16, approaches the stand with the determination that has always characterized her. She is the most physically similar to me, but she has a rebellious spirit that reminds me of Valerie when she was young. Andrea, you are a minor, but your opinion is very important to the court. What do you remember about your life before coming to live with your grandmother? Andrea looks at Valerie with an expression I can't decipher. Your Honor, I was very little, but I remember things. I remember being hungry. I remember crying and no one coming. I remember the smell of the house where we lived, a smell of sadness and abandonment. Valerie folds in on herself as if her youngest daughter's words were physical blows. But I also remember, Andrea continues, the first day at Grandma Eleanor's house. I remember she gave me a warm bath and put me in clean pajamas that smelled like fabric softener. I remember she made me warm milk with honey before bed and sang me a lullaby. Would you like to get to know your biological mother better? The judge asks. Andrea thinks for a moment. Your Honor, I'm not going to lie. I'm curious to meet the woman who gave me life, but I'm also scared. Scared that she'll leave again. Scared that her promises are like the ones she made 13 years ago. And where do you feel safest? With my Grandma Eleanor, Your Honor. She has never failed me, never lied to me. When I asked her why my mom had left, she didn't invent pretty stories. She told me the truth, that sometimes adults make difficult decisions, and that she loved me enough to stay. Andrea returns to her seat, and the judge addresses me again. Mrs. Vance, your grandchildren have been very clear in their preferences. Is there anything else the court should know before making a decision? I look at the yellow envelope in my hands, and then I look at my 3 grandchildren. They have been brave in speaking their truth. Now it's my turn to be brave with mine. Yes, Your Honor, there's something else, something that will completely change the perspective of this case. I pull the last document from the envelope. It's a sheet I've folded and unfolded so many times that the crease lines are permanent. This is a document I found 2 years ago among the things Valerie abandoned in her apartment, a document she herself wrote and signed. Valerie turns pale as a ghost. Her lawyer leans toward her, but my daughter shakes her head repeatedly. What kind of document, Mrs. Vance? A voluntary renunciation of parental rights, Your Honor, written in my daughter's own hand, signed and dated 3 days after she left the children with me. Judge Theodore Mason stands up abruptly, his expression transforming from professional curiosity to absolute shock. A voluntary renunciation of parental rights? Mrs. Vance, are you sure about what you're saying? Completely sure, Your Honor. I extend the document towards the court clerk. This paper was among the things Valerie abandoned in her apartment. The landlady gave it to me along with photographs and other personal documents my daughter left behind. Valerie stumbles in her seat as if she's about to faint. Her lawyer, Mark Sullivan, takes the document with trembling hands, and his face loses all color as he reads it. This can't be real, he murmurs. Read it aloud, please, the judge orders. The lawyer clears his throat and begins to read in a choked voice. I, Valerie Vance, 26 years of age, hereby voluntarily relinquish all my rights as mother of Arthur Vance, 7 years old, Emily Vance, 5 years old, and Andrea Vance, 3 years old. I acknowledge that I do not have the emotional, economic, or psychological capacity to raise them adequately. The silence in the room is so profound that you can hear the agitated breathing of everyone present. My grandchildren look at each other with expressions of confusion and pain. "Continue," the judge says in a grave voice. "I fully authorize my mother, Eleanor Vance, to make all legal, medical, and educational decisions related to my children. I waive any right to visit them, contact them, or claim them in the future. This decision is definitive and irrevocable. Signed, Valerie Vance, dated October 15th, 2011. Valerie breaks into hysterical sobs. "I was crazy. I didn't know what I was writing. I was mentally ill." The judge raps his gavel repeatedly. "Order. Mrs. Vance, do you have witnesses that this document was written voluntarily by your daughter?" "Yes, Your Honor." "The landlady of the building where Valerie lived, Mrs. Paula Sterling, can testify that my daughter asked her for paper and a pen to write an important letter 3 days after leaving the children. She can also confirm that Valerie was conscious and coherent during those days." Attorney Mark Sullivan whispers urgently to his client, but Valerie continues to sob uncontrollably. "Furthermore," I continue, "there's something else the court should know, something I discovered only 2 weeks ago that explains why my daughter returned exactly now." All eyes are fixed on me. I can feel the tension in the room intensify. "Your Honor, I hired the private investigator not only to learn about my daughter's recent movements, but also to fully understand her current situation. What we discovered is revealing." I pull a small folder from my purse. "Valerie and her partner, Javier Dawson, are facing a severe financial crisis. 6 months ago, Javier lost his job. 4 months ago, they received an eviction notice from their home. 3 months ago, exactly when they learned about my brother's inheritance, they began procedures to obtain custody of my grandchildren." Valerie lifts her head, her eyes red from crying. "Mom, please, let me finish, daughter." My voice is firm but not cruel. "The investigator also discovered that you and Javier have been living on loans and credit cards. You owe more than $30,000 in accumulated debt." The judge reviews the documents I've provided. "And you believe that your grandchildren's inheritance is the solution they're seeking for their financial problems?" "I don't believe it, Your Honor. I know it." I look directly at Valerie. "Because a week ago, my daughter called me on the phone for the first time in 13 years. The surprise in the room is palpable. Even my grandchildren look at me in astonishment because I hadn't told them about this call. "And what did she say in that call?" the judge asks. "She told me she had matured, that she had overcome her problems, and that she wanted to get her children back. When I asked her why after so long, she said she had been saving money to offer them a better life." I paused dramatically. Then I asked her about my brother's inheritance. There was a long silence, and then she said, "Mom, that money belongs to my children. I just want to make sure they receive it when the time is right." "And what did you reply?" I told her that her children already had access to that inheritance through me, their legal guardian, that the money was safe in a trust fund until each of them turned 21. It was then that her tone changed completely. Valerie covers her face with her hands, knowing what's coming. She told me that as their biological mother, she had more right to manage that inheritance than I did. She told me she had consulted with a lawyer and could legally fight for custody. She threatened me, Your Honor. The judge leans forward. "How did she threaten you?" "She told me that if I didn't voluntarily transfer custody and control of the inheritance, she would accuse me of kidnapping. She told me she had witnesses who could testify that I had intentionally alienated the children from her. She told me that a judge would always favor a biological mother over a grandmother." Arthur suddenly stands up from his seat. "Grandma, why didn't you tell us she threatened you?" "Because I didn't want you to worry more than necessary," I reply softly, "and because I knew the truth would come out at the right time." The judge raps his gavel. "Young man, please take your seat." Then he looks at me. "Mrs. Vance, do you have that phone conversation recorded?" "No, Your Honor, but I have something better." I smile slightly. After that call, my daughter sent me several text messages where she repeated her threats, messages that are saved on my phone and that I have printed for the court. I pull out the message printouts and hand them to the clerk. The judge reads them in silence, his expression growing more severe with each message. "Can you read some of these messages to the court?" the judge asks. I take the printouts and read in a clear voice. Message from July 18th. "Mom, think it over carefully. I'm the biological mother, and any judge will side with me. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." I continue. Message from July 20th. "I've been talking to my lawyer. He says what you did could be considered parental kidnapping. You could go to jail." And the last message. My voice grows firmer. From July 22nd. "Mom, if you give me custody voluntarily, we can reach an agreement on the inheritance. 50-50. You keep half for having taken care of them. I keep half because I'm their mother. But if you force me to go to trial, I get everything." The judge places the documents on his desk and looks directly at Valerie. "Mrs. Vance, do you confirm that you sent these messages?" Valerie sobs, unable to articulate a word. Her lawyer looks completely defeated. "Your Honor," I say softly, "I want to make it clear that I'm not seeking revenge against my daughter. I understand that she went through difficult times when she was young. I understand that early motherhood and mental health problems can lead to desperate decisions." I look at Valerie with sadness, but also with determination. But what I cannot accept is that after 13 years of total absence, after having formally relinquished her rights as a mother, after having formed a new family, and completely forgotten about these children, she now returns only because money is involved. "What do you request from the court?" the judge asks. "That my permanent legal guardianship over my minor grandchildren be confirmed, that my daughter's custody demand be completely rejected, and that a restraining order be issued preventing Valerie from approaching the children unless they, when they are of legal age, voluntarily decide to have contact with her." Valerie shouts from her seat, "You can't take my children away from me forever!" I turn to her with an expression that mixes pain and firmness. "Daughter, you yourself gave them up 13 years ago. I'm not taking anything from you. I'm just protecting what you abandoned." The judge declares a 30-minute recess to review all the documentation presented. The courtroom partially empties, but I remain seated in my place, holding my purse against my chest as if it were a protective shield. My grandchildren approach me, surrounding me with their arms in a silent embrace that speaks more than 1,000 words. "Grandma," Andrea whispers, "why did you never tell us she had given us up in writing?" "Because I wanted you to have the opportunity to form your